I know it probably is boring to you guys. So I'm going to go straight to my interview now. I spoke with this lady before Christmas. Her name is Kayla Hounsell. She is originally from Gander, but she lives in Halifax. And as a matter of fact, she is the national correspondent for CBC the national, for the Maritime provinces. And she'll talk a little bit about that. But she has a book that is out. It's already out. It's called First Degree, and it is based on a true crime and trial of a murder in Nova Scotia. And what's interesting about this is that it's a drug related murder. The body has never been found, but evidence, of course, has been found to convict the person that was charged, and he is serving time for killing the other guy. They were students and very affluent and successful and intelligent, and not your typical, as she says, people that you see. As she covered the courtroom beat, these were unusual people to have as part of that. So it's an intriguing book with lots of twists and turns, and here it is, my conversation with Kayla Hounsell. Have a fantastic day. Hello.
Yes.
Okay.
Hello?
Hi, Kayla. The Skype made a sound like it dropped the call, and I was like, what?
Oh.
So how are you this morning?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's not a bad day today, is it? Now, where are you right now?
I'm in new-wes-valley, Pound Cove specifically.
Okay. So,
so this
Kayla,
is where my family is from. My dad is from here.
That was my very first question. So I noticed that you're in Halifax. Is that correct? Is where it's home base?
That's right.
For you. But you are from the province originally, which you just said. So
right.
So you're
I was
home.
born here in new-wes-valley, but I moved to Gander when I was 4, and that's where I grew up and went to high school and spent all those formative years there until after high school I moved away for university. But this is very much home for me and always will be.
Right. Yeah, it is. I was away for 25 years and came back 6 years ago. So, yeah, home is home.
It doesn't matter how long you go away for. Newfoundland is always home, I think, for all of us.
No, there's no such thing as an ex-Newfoundlander, is there?
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
Say that word.
So you are a reporter with the CBC?
Mm-hmm. That's right. I'm the CBC's national reporter for the Maritime provinces. So I live in Halifax, but whenever there is news of national significance in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, or PEI, I travel to every little corner of those provinces. So it's good fun.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Yeah. That's a pretty good, it's a big territory, but it's pretty good work.
It is. We're on the road a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And so now this book that you've written is a nonfiction book based upon a story you were covering as a journalist. Is that correct?
That's right. I was a reporter at CTV at the time. I had covered this case for almost 3 years by the time I decided to write a book. So obviously it's been longer than that now. So I was really invested in the story as a reporter covering it. And then most people are pretty surprised to hear that writing the book wasn't actually my idea. So as you say, I was covering it as a reporter. I was in court covering the trial, so nearing the end of the 3 years. And I was live tweeting, which most reporters do now when it comes to court proceedings. So, very focused on pumping out as much material as quickly as possible as the testimony, the evidence was coming into the courtroom. And I got an email flash across my screen from the woman who would become my editor, Elaine McCluskey from Nimbus Publishing, asking if I had ever considered writing anything long form or if I had. And I hadn't, but of course I had considered it. Most journalists have at least considered writing a book. I didn't know anyone at Nimbus. I didn't know really if this was even a serious offer, if this was even possible. And I was also on deadline, so I went racing back to the TV station to file my story for the 6 o'clock news and then did some checking into it. And of course, it was the real deal. And here we are.
So now I'm not very familiar with this story.
Sure.
And I haven't had time, I just realized you were here and I haven't had time to pick up your book and read it. So, I think probably since I'm really a news junkie kind of person, if I don't know about this, then I'm assuming that my audience may not as well. So could you just give us a bit of just an overview of the story? It's a murder trial what it culminated in, correct?
That's right. So this is a true crime story about a medical school student convicted of the first-degree murder of one of his classmates, and the body has never been found. So it's a bit of a murder mystery that way. It's really a rare glimpse, I think, into the Canadian justice system, and I think this is why this book is of so much interest for people outside of Nova Scotia, where there was, extreme interest in this case, because this is a very unusual case in that, as a reporter, I spend a lot of time in a courtroom and I see the people that come in and out of there. And, we have an accused who was going to be a doctor. We have a victim who was also very promising physics student, and not just the accused and the victim, but all of their friends. We saw this lineup of young, attractive, intelligent university students being dragged through the Canadian justice system. And I think it's just so rare. These are not the people we see in courtrooms. So the specifics of this case, I'll just give you a little synopsis. Taylor Sampson was the victim. He was 22 years old, and he told his girlfriend that it was a Saturday night. They were getting ready to go downtown. And he told his girlfriend he was just going a few houses down and would be right back. He left his keys and his wallet and his medication on the table, and he took a big black bag with him. And she believed that there was a large quantity of marijuana in that bag. She had no idea how much or anything else about what was going to happen. And so he went and he never came back. He was seen on surveillance video entering an apartment building with the person who is now convicted of his murder, and he's never seen leaving that apartment building. So that sort of seems to make it pretty cut and dry, but it isn't, because of the fact that his remains have never been found. And there were so many dramatic twists and turns throughout the trial. It went on 2 months, which made it one of the longest trials in Nova Scotia's history.
Yeah, I was, because I did try to, catch up on the story. It is absolutely fascinating for all the reasons that you just said. The fact that he went into a building and never came out, yet the remains were never found, it's it's like he just vanished. And
it very much is like he just vanished. And, I a lot of people know that I covered the court proceedings because it was so public, and I was doing that live tweeting. But what a lot of people don't realize is that I covered this from the very beginning days in August 2015, when Taylor Sampson was first reported missing. So, I did the first interview with his mother at that time, when she didn't even realize that her son was dead. No one did. It was a missing persons case, and even the police said in the beginning it was very much a standard missing persons case. It wasn't until they heard about the large quantity of marijuana that this sort of got kicked up to major crime, and they realized this could be something so much more. And then a couple of weeks after that, there was a large, expansive search of a farm in the Truro area, which is about 100 kilometers outside of Halifax, Nova Scotia's capital, which is where the person who has now been convicted, William Sanderson, where his family lives. And they have a large, sprawling farm there. And so there were police officers and search and rescue just combing that area. And I was there every day. This was a 6-day search. And of course, we were all expecting to go on the 6 o'clock news each day with the news that Taylor Sampson's body had been found. And it never happened. And we didn't know why or what did happen at that time. There was very little information. And of course, finally, years later, when it went to trial, we heard the evidence and we learned that there was a lot found on that farm. There was a shower curtain. There was that big black bag Taylor Sampson was seen on surveillance video with. There was a tarp, some garbage, all kinds of things. And a lot of it was tested and confirmed Taylor Sampson's DNA. So these were things that were found on the killer's family farm.
But not the body.
But not the body. And they even had cadaver dogs searching there, and there were times where they indicated there was a presence of something. There was even like try to picture, this is a really large area and it's dense brush. So they were dealing with lots of sort of different terrain that they were searching. And there was a pond, even a very small pond on the property. And they even brought in divers. They had the pond drained after a cadaver dog indicated there may be something in the area. But the body has never been found.
It's fascinating, but obviously they had enough evidence to convict
exactly
Will Sanderson. Will Sanderson, that's his name, right?
Will Sanderson, yes.
Yeah, and so then eventually it goes to trial, and then all of that happens, and then you get asked to write this book. So, what was that process like to take all of what you had done over a large period of time and all of your research, plus I'm sure you had to research outside of what you had done. What sort of a task was that? I mean, it just sounds so very overwhelming.
Yes, thank you for saying that. It was extremely overwhelming. I think it didn't, like anything that you do the first time, this is my first book, so I learned things about how I would do things differently, but it also didn't help that I didn't know that I was writing a book until probably exactly the midway through the trial point, I would say. So we're about a month in. So, for those who don't do the kind of work that you and I do, writing a story for television, which would be about 2 minutes, you're keeping very different notes than you would be for the level of detail that's included in a project like First Degree in this book. So that meant that I was poring over hours and hours and hours of audio from the court recording 2 months of the trial. So people ask me if I attended the trial, and I always say yes twice because I was there in person and then I went back over it all. There were 100 exhibits entered as evidence, which I gained access to all of those, and a lot of that detail is also included in the book. In addition to that, I did 20 interviews for this book, and those are interviews that I did after everything was said and done, after the trial, after the conviction. So not sort of the day-to-day reporting that I was doing for like news reporting while it was all underway. So definitely it was a monumental task. It helped that I have a great team, Nimbus Publishing. My editor is actually a former journalist. So I think that really helped that we were thinking about this project the same way, which for me was just like a really, really big story. I've always thought of this like a giant piece of journalism. I haven't written anything in this book that I wouldn't write for the CBC, for example. I don't take a position. I'm not arguing anybody's side. This is a presentation of this case from start to finish with, I think, some little extra things for even people who did follow it closely throughout.
Yeah, it sounds like, as I said, overwhelming undertaking, and to condense that kind of research into a book size. The book sounds big compared to a news story, but compared to the research, it's quite small. It's figuring out how to approach it and how to condense it is a challenge.
It's true. I think that is the first battle, if you will, to think about the layout of how you're going to do this. So, I decided what's going to be in chapter 1, 2, and 3 before I started writing anything. But I did have that moment, this is something that people can probably relate to, or at least having seen. Whenever there's a movie about writers, I find there's that scene where they sit there with their laptop or their computer screen and the cursor is just sort of flashing and they have the blank page. And I did that. That happened to me. I was, doing all this work and doing the interviews and covering the trial, and the trial was over and the interviews had been done. And I sat there looking at that flashing cursor going, okay, now I have to start writing this thing.
I know that feeling quite well.
It's a daunting task.
It really is. But I mean, all you do is you just have to start. That's it. And
you just have to start, and you take it chapter by chapter, and then before you know it, you have a book.
Now, that's all the practical work piece of this, but this is, a life was lost. another one ruined. I mean, and all of the collateral damage to the people around them. And it's a very emotional story. Two families
is,
affected
and
forever. And